19 and turn 20 in such a fast corner here in turn 19. That's just going to be one quick downshift, back on the throttle, and then up to the final corner. RC Enerson here taking the pit lane. Good siding lap for him, making sure all systems are okay. So I just can't wait to see them start here momentarily, breaking down some really quick laps. Felix Rosenqvist in the shot here with Chip Ganassi Racing.
He has one that has can't miss in terms of a label. He has been called can't miss by even fellow drivers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the key to Felix Rosenqvist is look at that big camera pod on the top of that car. That's going to be for some cool viewing, I bet, some cool 360 viewing. But I know Felix, he's just phenomenal. I mean, he can drive absolutely anything. He's won Indy Lights races. He did that a couple of years ago. He's won Formula E races. He's won GT races in Japan. He's won in Super Formula in Japan. So this is a guy that's so versatile. And what do we talk about during the NTT IndyCar Series season? That there is no other series in the world that rewards diversity more than this series. I think Felix Rosenqvist is gonna fit right in, and obviously at a place like this, he is plenty familiar with these types of tracks. And I think the biggest thing for him during the course of the season is going to be adapting to the ovals.
Well, and I think he's made it very, very clear. This was not something that he looked at from the standpoint, well, if I can't do anything else, I might as well do this. I mean, his intentions are to be here for the long haul.
Oh, absolutely is, and he's been fighting hard to make this happen. And I think it was actually the intent for him to be in the IndyCar Series a couple of years ago, but a schedule conflict with his Formula E commitments made him unable to do that. So now finally in the series full time, and I think he's going to absolutely love it. And yeah, just kind of gingerly getting up to speed here at Coyne. Again, very, very low grip circumstances at the moment here with all the rain that we've had over the last couple of days, and basically no rubber down whatsoever, and a very, very low track temp. It was actually down in the 40s overnight, so it's going to take a while here for everything to come up to temp.
Mark Janes, Anders Krone, be joined momentarily by Jake Query out on pit road, and we are at Circuit of the Americas just outside of Austin, Texas. IndyCar spring training is underway. My friend, we will be in St. Petersburg, Florida before we know it, huh?
Oh, and it just can't come soon enough. Yeah, no, it's just magnificent seeing these cars back on track. And obviously St. Pete last year is when we saw the new aero kit come into full play, and boy, was that a crazy race weekend. So I think, just thinking back to that, and can't wait to get the season rolling. There's that TK out here getting up to speed. And of course, this early session today, I think we're going to see a lot of sort of abrupt running in that. We're going to see people go out for a few laps. And what they're essentially going to try to figure out in this very first run is they're going to figure out the overall downforce level. They're going to figure out their ride heights, because a lot of these teams haven't been to this track yet. So they want to figure out how low can we go to the ground with a car without it dragging the bottom too much. They're also going to figure out the gear stack, because that's obviously something that they have to fine-tune for every single condition, and it's something where if you're a little bit off on that can have a huge impact on lap time. So I think that's what these early runs are all about, is figuring out how is my overall downforce, how is my ride height, and how are my gears. And then they're going to fine-tune that, and then come after lunch, that's when they're really going to put all those packages together and be able to go even quicker.
Well, IndyCar, of course, doing all it can to enhance the fan experience. And, of course, now it has a direct-to-consumer subscription-based service allowing fans total access to all things video, live practice and qualifying sessions, races on demand within 4 hours after the checker. It's the NBC Sports Gold Pass. It'll have content such as the 500 Victory Banquet, the Festival Parade, race highlights, a 30-minute recap, plus additional packages produced by NBC. All gold content will be fully produced shows like you've come to know from NBC. In other words, they're high quality. Most major sports have similar offerings, and so the IndyCar Series doing what it can for the fan. The early bird price, $49.99. After March 10th, it goes up to $54.99. Subscription runs through January 31st of 2020. You do not need cable subscription to enjoy that IndyCar Gold.
Oh, and I've already bought my subscription, and I'm ready to go. So yeah, I'm excited to see that.
But you're not necessarily a fan. You just want to listen to yourself. It's all Anders all the time.
You got me there.
Yeah, you need a new ringtone that's got your voice in it.
Oh dear. Oh, it's already gone
We're
downhill.
in mid-season form, huh? Yeah, we're in mid-season form.
Marcus Ericsson getting warmed up here through turn 19. he's obviously been here before. He's raced here several times in Formula One, and boy, what a transition this is going to be. I've talked to him quite a few times, actually, and he's talked about just how difficult the IndyCar is to drive compared to that of the Formula One car. With so much less downforce, the car moves around so much more, so there's actually a lot more that the driver can do from his own inputs. And so I think Mark is in for a big learning curve here, and arguably it could be more difficult for him coming here to COTA, because he has to completely relearn sort of the driving style, because he's used to driving this track a certain way, but now he's got to completely change that to suit the NTT IndyCar.
Well, and we can't see this race team, Aero Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, without being reminded of the incredible story that's unfolded courtesy of Robert Wickens, what he has posted on social media in terms of his recovery. I'd say every tweet he posts wins the day. I mean, it's been amazing to watch his perseverance.
Yeah, it's just been phenomenal, and I had an opportunity about a month ago actually to interview him in Denver and talk to him about kind of sharing his entire story. And he said it's actually been fairly therapeutic for him to be able to share the step by step, because the spinal cord injuries are so difficult to document and so difficult to kind of to give a firm prognosis. So it's helped him a lot in just shedding some light on the situation and all the unknowns that come with it. And yeah, I truly commend him for what he's doing. And he's doing like 6 hours of physical therapy on a day-to-day basis, just with that goal of getting back in the car. And when you see the progress that he's made, it's just astonishing. And it certainly will make you feel bad. Will make you feel bad for complaining about minor nuances in life. That's
I should lay off complaining about my creaky knees for a second in the morning. That's for sure. Not a lot of times to speak being posted. Not a lot of laps being turned early on. We expect as the day progresses and the temperatures go up, the activity will increase.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Felix Rosenqvist actually already up to a decent pace here. He's the only driver that's really pushing here early on as he goes through the S's. And just look at the direction change in the car here. How cool that's going to be. And being held up here slightly by Kyle Kaiser. Good to see him back in that Juncos Racing entry. But yeah, Felix Rosenqvist early on pushing very hard. And this is, to be honest, this is where his Formula E experience is going to come in very handy, because those are very, very low grip cars. They run on treaded tires. They don't have a lot of downforce. So this is going to be sort of similar movements to what he's used in those cars. So again, that diversity for Felix Rosenqvist, very, very good already.
Yeah, again, it's great to see Kyle back in that car. I mean, you know, Kyle did all he could last year, hanging around the racetrack, ran that partial schedule, spent some time in the booth, which gave us a quality analyst from time to time. We were happy to have Kyle with us on IndyCar radio. But what a likable young man, and I mean, he's going to stick with it, that's for sure. And he's got a world to tell.
Yeah, he is, and he actually made his debut in the Rolex 24 at Daytona with Juncos Racing with their new Cadillac DPI program as well earlier this month, or in January rather. So yeah, he's racking up the miles here, and good to see him back, and hoping to see he'll have an expanded program this year.
Again, Circuit of the Americas, NTT IndyCar Series Spring Training. Jake Query, Kevin Lee going to be manning pit road for us throughout the course of this day. Mark Janes, Anders Cohn, happy to be in the booth. And boy, what convenience for us, huh? I mean, this place, there's just, people say, the shuttle, I wrote in, the guy said, well, it just looks like they got everything right. And I would say that they certainly did. And you know, who knows? It may have been a case where they went around and looked at the most recent race facilities that have been built. They took all the good and made sure they made notes of the not so good and didn't make those mistakes here at COTA.
Yeah, I think they've done a fantastic job, and also in just designing all the vantage points that you can see so many portions of the racetrack. Often when you get to these huge facilities, you're only able to see a straightaway or one corner at a time, but the way they've built it is almost into a bit of an arena situation, so that you have a lot of high points that you can look down at the track, and that gives you a great vantage point of everything. So they've done a tremendous job here, and to your point, yeah, we're sitting inside the media center right on the inside of pit lane. We can watch straight out to the track, and just a beautiful setting. So massively excited to be here, and obviously March, what is it, 22nd can't come soon enough.
Well, you look at the roster of drivers, 25 cars entered in the test this weekend, and we said it, and we've said it time and time again, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. The battle for the championship, I mean, it is going to be an all-out brawl. I mean, I think again, the field is as deep and as talented and experienced as it had ever been in the series.
Yeah, it is for sure. And I think, well, obviously, during the course of the year last year, we saw a huge learning curve with the new aero kit, but now things are a bit more equal. So I think we're going to see from the get-go, we're going to, as we see Kyle Kaiser here stopped on track. That's coming out of turn 11, so must have run out of power. Maybe just an electrical cycle needed there, and a quick reboot from the safety team.
So Kyle Kaiser, he'll get retrieved by the safety team. They'll get him back onto pit road, and as we mentioned, driving through Coast Racing in the test this weekend. We hope that turns into an extended opportunity for Kyle Kaiser. So it's been a while since we've had a repeat champion. And I will say, though, if there's anybody that's capable of doing that, it would be the defending champion of the series.
There for sure is, but I mean, if you look at it relatively speaking, I mean, how did Scott Dixon win the championship last year? That was through consistency, and it was others that had the ups and downs, and I think that they're going to look back, and especially in the case of Alexander Rossi and Will Power, I think they're going to look at their season and say, okay, what little bits and pieces could I have eliminated? Could I have been a bit more conservative in one race or another to potentially get me to that championship title? And I think they're going to take those learnings and apply that to this season, because that's why Scott Dixon's the Iceman, right? He just doesn't make mistakes, and I think the other ones are going to have a serious look at that and figure out how they can apply that, because I think both Will Power and Alexander Rossi, certainly pace-wise, last year were just astonishing.
Yeah, I don't know, other than maybe Tony Kanaan's 500 win, I don't know that I've ever seen a driver express such a sense of relief over winning the Indianapolis 500 as Will Power expressed it. And let's not talk about just the Indy 500. I mean, Will Power had the kind of May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway last year that may never be duplicated.
It was unreal, and it was such a stark contrast to the rest of the season for him, because the entire season for him was so up and down, and he had so much bad luck, so many mechanical failures, but then the month of May was just picture perfect. So it was almost like it was meant to be. But I know this year, okay, he's got the 500, he's got the monkey off his back. Now he wants to go for a second championship.
Joseph Newgarden, very, very close in the throes of a championship to the very end. But I think the other member of that team, Simon Pagenaud, probably as anxious as anyone for 2019 to come along. It's not as though Simon was not in contention, was not competitive. But Simon Pagenaud would be the first to tell you that he was anxious to get to 2019, put 18 behind him.
Yeah, no, he absolutely was. And we know he had some struggles early on, as we see the safety team here retrieving that car of Kyle Kaiser. We know he had some struggles early on adapting to the new aero kit and just the low aero configuration. And his driving style, if you think back historically at Simon Pagenaud's success as a driver, it's all come in very high downforce cars. So I think it's taken a little bit of time just to get used to that.
We said we would have Kevin Lee, Jake Query with us. Let's welcome in Jake Query. Jake, welcome to Circuit of the Americas.
Mark, thanks. It's great to be here, no question about it. And Max Chilton has been here before. You've taken an install lap in your Carlin machine. This is the second year now for Carlin Racing, fourth overall for you. But let's begin by talking about this circuit. You ran here in Formula One some 6 years ago. But what is the challenge or the fun of this track?
This sort of goes back to my roots, as in I love long circuits. I think it makes more of a challenge to get a 2-minute lap together, basically. It's fast, it's flowing, and it's undulating. It's like a modern version of Spa, which is my favourite track. Turn one's crazily uphill, more so in real life than on TV. You just can't understand how steep that turn one climb is. And it just suits my driving style. Obviously, I've only done an install. I haven't been back here for 6 years, and it was in a completely different machine. But we've got 2 days to iron out any issues we have in the car, and hopefully we'll be right up in the timesheets.
Let's talk about your off season, because all of a sudden here we are, and the season is here. Did you get a chance to relax? What sort of things go on, both from a business standpoint and a personal standpoint for Max Chilton?
Yeah, it's been an incredibly long winter. The last time I was in America was 5 months ago at Sonoma for the last race of the season. I haven't been in a racing car since, so it's a very odd sport. You very rarely get to practice what you preach, but obviously behind the scenes there's lots going on. I'm trying to get fit. The team have worked a lot of hours on rigs and testing away from the track to try and perform better this year. Obviously in IndyCar the season is so tightly compressed, there's very little time to learn from anything, so you have to do the season, learn from it, and then and then make a step forward the next year. And that's what we hope to be doing. St. Pete is only 3 weekends away, so hopefully we'll be up to speed by then.
We know, obviously, that Charlie Kimball will be your teammate for a handful of races this year. We'll see what happens with that other car. How does that affect you from a teammate standpoint from 1 week to the next?
I think, obviously, last year being the team's first year, it would have been a bit of an issue having a driver in and out of certain races. Charlie and I helped develop the car last year. I think now we're into our second year. It won't be an issue for the team. Obviously, it's unfortunate for Charlie to not be able to do the full season, but that's racing. I'm here to race and try and put Carlin as high up as we can in the championship.
Do you anticipate that you will have a teammate in the weekends that Charlie Kimball's not there?
I would like to think so. There's definitely a few drivers in the pipeline, not just for us, but everyone up and down the pit lane. There's a few walking around, should we say. So hopefully we can fill those seats for the remaining part of the season.
Fourth-year IndyCar driver, NTT IndyCar driver, Max Chilton joining me here. As you get set now, let's let fans know what you're looking for this weekend. What's the overall objective with a test like this?
So a test is, obviously, we've had our first test of the season at Laguna last week, so we've ironed out any problems which we would have in the car, touch wood. It's now trying to do all the changes that we've thought of over the winter but not been able to actually try and test. It's really important as well when you do a change that you work out exactly what it's done, whether it was positive or negative. Some people sort of think, well, I don't really know what they did, but we'll keep it on the car. And then it's very quickly, after a few changes, you get lost. You've got to iron out exactly what's good and what's not, and move yourself forward and up the timesheets.
I'm just curious. You said that the off-season you wanted to get fit. You weigh like $150. What part of getting fit do you have to actually do? Let's be honest.
I've actually, since I've joined America, I've got into the lifestyle of America. I've got on nearly 10 kilos since I was last here in F1 6 years ago. So I've been trying to shred a little bit of weight, get stronger. There's no pad steering compared to Formula One. So you have to have a bigger upper body to sort of hold on for some of the circuits. And yeah, just enjoy myself. I like time at home, just in my garden with my friends, just chilling. I like sort of shutting off from racing in the winter.
Parts of the U.S. were 30 below zero while you were gone. So it was smart of you, right? You weren't cold. You were just chilling.
Yeah, and that's unbelievable. England's known for its pretty poor weather, but we definitely have better weather than most parts of America this winter.
Sounds like engines might be firing back up here, Max. I'll let you get to work, but we appreciate the time. Look forward to the year. Max Chilton, now in his second year, Mark, with Carlin Racing, his fourth overall in the series.
Yeah, you even said you thought he was packing it on at the end of last season. I remember you making that up. A whole 10 kilos.
I think I referenced that exactly.
Yeah, been meaning to speak to you about that, Max. Take better care of yourself.
No, it's great to see Max back, and hoping that he'll have a good season. Obviously, Carlin came on very, very strong towards the tail end of the year last year, so
yes.
Very, very good to see them back in action, and certainly would have wished to see Charlie Kimball full-time as well, because I think that would have driven the program further forward. But anyhow, good to see Max Chilton back, and let's see what they can do.
Well, one of those drivers, I don't know, that possibly could fill in those gaps would be young Mr. Pagenaud Ward. How directions changed quickly for him over the course of the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, it's been crazy, and obviously a great shame to see him kind of out of that seat. And he looked set for a long time there, and it was everything just looked to be on track.
Yeah.
And him and Colton Herta were going to be teammates, and it was all going to be honky-dory, just like the Indy Lights days. And unfortunately, Pagenaud Ward out of that, so I know he'll be walking up and down the paddock and trying to figure out any opportunity there might be. But let's not forget, we have R.C. Anderson in the car here alongside Max Chilton, and who knows, he did three races back in 2016 and actually showed very, very well. So it'd be great to see him back on the grid.
Now, you've been on the business side of it much more than I have, and I would say this: if you were to write a book, I would say that most of I'm going to speculate here and say most of what you would write, no one would ever believe.
Probably.
Yeah.
The good news for me is I'm a horrible writer, so no one would buy the book anyway.
They wouldn't buy a book written in crayon for sure.
What we do write, segue, is on the Tweeter. So if anyone has any questions during the course of the day
Twitter,
today.
I think Twitter.
No, it's the Tweeter.
Oh,
I'm pretty certain it's the Tweeter.
Go ahead.
So if anyone has any questions during the course of the day, reach out to Mark and myself on Twitter. We'll be answering questions during the course of the live stream, both this morning and this afternoon.
You just moved right by that question about the business side of it.
Sure,
you really don't want to talk about that. Donald Moscola, one of those checking in on Twitter, saying that, guys, it looks beautiful there. How's the weather? Well, we're in the booth, but when we were outside, the short time that we were outside, I would call it picture perfect. I mean, granted, we'd probably like to see temperatures come up just a little bit, but hardly a cloud in the sky. And I'd say we're in much better shape right now than those who happen to be in the northeastern portion of the United States, where some places are expected to get, 5-6 inches of ice and snow on top of that. No, I don't know.
No, thank you.
No.
But no, I think the one interesting thing about the day today is usually here in Austin we have a lot of wind, but today it's completely silent. So we have a beautiful sunny day. Started off in the low 50s, and we're expecting it to be in the mid 60s by the end of the day. So really ideal conditions here, and hopefully something that'll mirror the race weekend, so that whatever they learn from a setup perspective translates onto the race weekend.
Is this place big enough to where, much like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, obviously that headwind's going to affect you in one way down the straightaway, turns into a tailwind down the back stretch? I would say with all of the different elevation changes, the wind could wring down.
It absolutely will. And around this place, I mean, with the huge brake zones that you had, and we saw Mike Hull tweet about it. It's 175 miles an hour down to 45 miles an hour. So imagine the difference. If you have a 20-mile-an-hour headwind coming into the brake zone in turn 12, the car is going to stop on a dime. But if you have a tailwind, it's going to be super difficult. And we saw it during the course of the year last year. Every single track had one troublesome corner, and it was all wind related.
Right.
At Barber Motorsports Park, it was turn 5 when they had that tailwind, and everyone kept going off the track. At Long Beach, it was turn 8 because they had a tailwind. So this car, very, very sensitive to that tailwind. It just lifts up the rear of the car. You lose the downforce from the bottom of the car from the diffuser, and then it makes the brake zones very, very difficult. So I definitely think that's going to be a huge factor in the race weekend.
But what I found interesting is that if you remember the points that you made there, it was an issue during practice and qualifying. And to the engineer's credit and to the driver's credit, we expected that to be a problem on race day, but maybe they were so focused on correcting that problem, another issue cropped up in another portion of the race.
Yeah, no, for sure, and it's also one of those things that in practice it's low pressure, so you're pushing as hard as you can, and if it is one thing, then rightly so, then the engineers have to focus on that one area, and they were able to figure it out in the races for the most part, except for St. Pete, which was just crazy from start to end.
Tony DeZino checking in from Milwaukee. I trust we'll see Tony at the racetrack from time to time throughout the course of the year. We always enjoy Tony's work on the various media platforms he's a part of, and always like having him at the racetrack with us. He joins us in the booth from time to time for IndyCar, and hope he's had an enjoyable winter, and look forward to seeing Tony at the racetrack real soon. And again, don't forget, you can, Anders Crone, myself, Kevin Lee, Jake Query, have questions. We'll do our best to answer that for you, and as Anders is prone to do, if he doesn't know the answer, he makes it up, and it makes it sound like that it is the gospel for sure. So he has picked up that skill in broadcasting very early on in his career for sure. So that's why we love it.
Well, I've got no comeback for that one, Sam, but we focus on the action on the track.
Don't they look? I mean, they look fast right now. I mean, the car just looks fast.
And keep in mind, this is just the opening stages here,
right,
going through the S's, and it's kind of, you go 4th, 5th gear, then you go into that turn 3, 4, 5, and then gently it kind of slows, tightening up those back corners, and you have to start going down through the gears. But it is so quick early on, and I just can't wait for seeing one of these cars out on the Firestone red tires on a race weekend. I think that's going to be next level.
Obviously, with that 130-foot climb up that hill toward turn number 1, absolutely nothing else like that anywhere in the NTT IndyCar series. So now my question would be, a lot of times drivers, or the questions posed to them, does this remind you of anywhere? You heard, earlier, you heard Max Chilton say, this reminds me of the tracks that I'm used to. So here in the U.S., is there anything that this will remind you of? You're familiar? It's totally foreign.
Honestly, I think the only 2 tracks that you can draw the only 3 tracks you can draw any comparison to would be Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Barber Motorsports Park, and Road America. And obviously, Road America, that's because of the long straightaways, Barber because of the elevation, and then Mid-Ohio because of all the back-to-back corners. But it is so different. It's such a different beast.
We talked about Simon Pagenaud and his focus going into 2019. Let's hear more about that with Jake Query.
It is hard to believe, Mark, that Simon Pagenaud is now entering his 5th season driving for Roger Penske. We were just talking about it, and I'm thinking, what is this, your 2nd or 3rd? They all start to come together. But take me through, Simon, right now where you are with the team versus, say, that 1st or 2nd year, and just the familiarity overall with it.
Well, listen, the first year was an interesting year because there was a lot of discovery. It's a big team, so it's a lot of people to talk to, a lot of resources to get from this team. And second year went incredibly well for the championship. Third year we finished second runner-up by very little margin to win the championship again. So it's been incredible. And last year's been it's been okay. It wasn't our best year, but you know, the result at the end was not bad. So, you know, we're entering our 5th season. The goal is to win the championship and the 500. It's quite clear. The biggest thing is to focus on the now. You know, we have a test session here today, and it's about preparing for the season. And my goal is to really be focused on the now and just extract the best of myself in the car.
In terms of the offseason and last year, you know, you're a guy that's won a championship. When you had a season where the results were up and down, was it difficult to just put it behind you and say, I'm just going to move forward with it? What was your mindset in the offseason?
Well, the offseason for me was the day after Sonoma. It was set on 2019, and a reset. I tried to go forward, understand how to make the car better, how to understand how to work better with the race team as well, which we always do. And this winter has been incredible as a race team. We've all gathered together. Everybody the day after Sonoma was already working at winning this championship coming up. So it's been an incredible gathering and chemistry of all the drivers and engineers together try to improve. It's not like we need to improve all that much as Team Penske, but it's pretty impressive to see this team is always looking for more.
For you personally in the offseason, just the way you've acclimated here in the last handful of years in the United States and living in North Carolina, did you get a chance to travel around? What did you do to get away from things and have fun?
Well, we usually, with Haley, and Norman, my dog, obviously, we go back to France for Christmas to see my friends and family. I have a fantastic group of friends. I have to say I'm very fortunate that way. Is they help me to just forget about racing for a little bit, 2 weeks maximum, and just live a normal life for a few days, and went skiing, enjoy eating some cheese in France, of course, but most importantly seeing my family and being around my roots and my cars is something I really enjoy doing. But you know, very quickly after that, it's just the mindset is on racing and training and being the best you can be.
This is a track where you have tested before, but I'm curious, when you come out for this test, I know you're just working with the team, refamiliarizing with the car. How much of what you learn here can translate to St. Pete, or are they completely different tracks?
It's a great question, Jake. Everywhere you learn something. The most important is to make a race car that's compatible at every track, and that's so every change is translate everywhere. If you have something that changes too much track to track, it becomes complicated. That's really what we're trying to do, is having a very consistent baseline.
Appreciate the time, and we wish you the best of luck. Best of luck for a good season and a safe one, all right?
Thanks, Jake.
Simon Pagenaud. Mark?
Deborah, Andy Merrick checking in, and we'll shovel this one over to you. Specifically, what changes of note were made, and I'm assuming both mean to the cars for 2019.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the cool thing, is that now the change is basically that the car has remained unchanged in between the start of last season and this season. So it means that everything that the teams and drivers learned during the course of the season last year will apply directly to this year. And we obviously, in the opening stages of the season last year, saw a lot of ups and downs from a performance perspective because people were figuring out the cars. So now it's more just about fine-tuning the cars, figuring out exactly what Simon Pagenaud touched on there, finding a car that's compatible with every type of track, and no more important is that than a track that's green, as we call it, as we have here today, with no rubber down on the track, where the cars tend to slide on top of the surface, and so the compliance in the car it becomes very, very important on this type of surface.
I did see, last year, the final had a peek at some of the schedules early on, and it appears as though that we might get that 30-minute warm-up session back on race.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, I feel like that was a recurring theme that we talked about at every single race event, where every driver kept complaining that there was no warm-up. So again, I don't think it'll have a huge impact on the end result, but it's for sure nice for the teams and drivers to have that last chance.
Well, especially if you don't qualify well.
Well, 100%. But it's sort of that last chance just to test out your gears and your downforce level and really get in race mode.
Well, business continues to pick up. And Jake Query's talked to a couple of the drivers on pit road getting ready to climb into race cars. Those that have returned laps so far include Rosenquist, Ericsson, Ed Jones, Harvey, Santino Ferrucci, Max Chilton has turned some shakedown laps, Tony Kanaan, and Sebastian Bourdais. TK, thrilled, I think, to be paired again with young Matthias Leist and looking for really, really good results in 2019 with AJ Foyt and ABC Supply.
Yeah, and they really showed flashes of speed last year. So this year, it's really got to be a matter of putting it all together. They were hampered by quite a few mechanical issues during the course of the year and some kind of strategy misses. And so I think if they put it all together, they could very well be in contention for some podium positions and maybe even more than that during the course of the year. Getting a lot of questions now on Twitter. Martin here, which I presume is from the UK, is asking, what's the chance of a British round of IndyCar? With Australia looking like it's back, I'd love to see IndyCars at either Donington or Brands Hatch. Well, I haven't heard rumblings of any of that, but I would love to see it at Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch GP and an IndyCar would be absolutely astonishing. That would be fantastic.
Jim checking in wants to know, do teams start testing with full fuel loads and gather data as that fuel burns off?
That is a very, very good question, and right now I don't exactly know what the plan is for that. With them doing the shorter runs at the moment, I would assume that they're running slightly lighter fuel loads. But at the moment, they're not going to be going for the all-out lap time. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of varied strategy there.
Former Indy 500 champion and a young man that many think is the favorite to win the championship in 2019, Alexander Rossi, is with Jay Query.
And Alexander Rossi, if he's going to pursue that championship, which, like you said, Mark, would seem to be almost an automatic that he's going to be right there in the running for it. But you got to refamiliarize yourself with this car, because it seems in the offseason, Alexander Rossi, every weekend you were driving something different. How many different styles of racing did you do in the last 3 months?
Only 2. So it wasn't quite every weekend. I would have loved that to be the case. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't doing any weird TV shows, so I figured I might as well do something productive, and my relationship with Honda and HPD kind of allowed me to obviously do not only Baja, but the 24 with Acura and Team Penske. So it's been a busy off season, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to keep driving.
You know, it's interesting with those two that you're talking about, between Baja and then an endurance race, which one is more challenging?
Oh. I mean, they're both equally challenging, right? I mean, Baja, obviously, because it's a completely new environment, and, I mean, dirt kind of rally racing. But then the endurance side of things is kind of more in my wheelhouse, but also very different because it's a different methodology and a different approach, right? You're sharing the car with 2 other drivers, and you can't have everything that you want. It's a much less selfish form of racing than IndyCar racing is, because you kind of have to all compromise and find a balance of what you want. So they're unique in their own rights, but happy to be back at my day job and driving IndyCars.
You know, for those of us that are not hopping from one car to the next in racing, I'm curious, how long does it take when you get in a car to immediately know what that car needs, as opposed to the discipline of the previous car you were in?
Like a lap, probably. Lap and a half. I mean, it's pretty automatic, because, you know, it's a cliche to say, but it's like riding a bike. I mean, we have so much time behind the wheel of these cars. I mean, this is kind of your comfort zone. So when you get back into it, you're just like, oh, this is, you know, where I left everything. And really, from the out lap, you can already kind of diagnose things, and you don't really carry over any habits. It's harder to go to the other cars, the cars where you don't have the amount of time in to kind of be to unlearn the traits that you might have in an IndyCar. So coming back here is definitely a lot easier, and I think that's why you see so many guys do it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect their actual paying job.
And actually, for the same question, I guess, with a track, when you come to a track like this one where you have been on it before, how long does it take you to automatically become reactionary and just know the course?
It's about the same. I mean, really, your first timed lap, you'll be a little bit conservative in areas because you don't know what the grip level is for the day. But then by the second and third time lap, I mean, you pretty much know where you need to be, and if you're doing your job right, you should be on the pace pretty much right away.
When you finished the amazing race, were you under the assumption that was the last time that you had to team with Conor Daly?
Yep. Yeah, it was. But it's pretty cool to see him with an awesome opportunity for the month of May. I know it's been a struggle for him over the past couple of years, and he's worked really hard this offseason, put this deal together, and it's going to be an awesome opportunity for him, and we're happy to have him part of the team.
You've got a couple of days, obviously, to test here for you personally and for the team. Maybe it's two different answers. What's the overall objective here?
Really just to get back into the rhythm of things and establish those productive lines of communication and start operating on that high level. I mean, we've had 2 test days kind of already this year, but this one's an important one because you know where you kind of stack up against everyone else. When you're doing the private tests, it's tough to gauge. So here we have pretty much the full field here, and we'll be able to see at the end of it, where we are and the developments we made in the off-season. So it's definitely an important couple of days leading into St. Pete.
Off-season felt long or off-season felt short?
Felt short this year, which is great. I mean, it's 6 months, so it was nice that it flew by, and just really happy to be back IndyCar racing, and the countdown to May is getting even shorter as well.
Your New England Patriots, begrudgingly for a lot of people, won the Super Bowl, but maybe you can get one this year as well.
I'm not going to get a Super Bowl, but I'll do my best to get a
Super
championship.
Bowl of racing.
Yes, absolutely. That's the plan.
I appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, man.
Alexander Rossi.
It's fascinating to me, the uncertainty that existed in terms of his future in this series. Even after he won the Indianapolis 500, and now he's all in with everything that he does, says, is. Alexander Rossi here in the NTT IndyCar Series, and I think it's cool. I'm one of those that is of the opinion that he is a favorite to win the championship this season, and the second half of that season he had last year was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it really was, and I think those were some of the best drives of his life, really. And even though he didn't win the Indy 500 and he didn't win the championship, I think he drove better than he ever has, and the pace that he had. I mean, I keep thinking back to that drive through the field at ISM Raceway, unlapping himself, driving up to be on the podium, and then doing the same essentially at Sonoma Raceway to be in the top 5, to be a lap down, unlap yourself, drive through the field. The pace that he showed was incredible, but I think that goes perfectly in line with what you just talked about. With when he came to IndyCar, I think he was like, okay, I'm going to take this as a year, I'm going to step away from Formula One and just going to do this as sort of a brief waiting period to be back in Formula One. But ever since he got that Indy 500 win, it's like he just committed himself 100% to IndyCar, and it shows in everything that he's doing. He's loving being here. He executes the races in almost a perfect manner every single time, and you can just really tell he's in it for the long haul, and I think it's fairly safe to say he'll win a championship at this point. Whether it's this year or not, we obviously don't know, but with as strong as he was towards the end of the year last year, it's going to be difficult to beat him.
And a lot of folks happy. They referenced the announcement with Air Force sponsorship. Conor Daly gets a shot with Andretti Autosport. And when you climb in one of those cars in the month of May, you got to be considered one of the favorites.
Oh, well, 100%. And I think the other beautiful thing for Conor Daly here is having the opportunity to conclude the deal so early on gives him the opportunity to now stay with that team every single race weekend leading into the month of May, which means he can work with the engineers. He can see how the whole team communicates, so that when the month of May comes around, he's actually already fully up to speed. So then it's just a matter of him jumping in the car and figuring out his own driving details. But there is a huge amount of benefit in being able to sit in on those debriefs. So I think it should be a great program for Conor Daly.
I'm older than you, and so maybe you can't relate to this to the extent that I can. But when you see Indy cars, and one of them is a yellow Pennzoil car, all is right with the world.
It really is, and like I said, I can't even relate to the historic presence that has, but it's just a damn good looking car, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Elio Castroneves, great to see him in the test.
Yeah, it really is, and obviously he's getting up to speed, getting ready for another month of May with Team Penske. He's got a lot of speed and a lot of promise that he wants to work upon and try and get another Indy 500 win and also do a great job at the Indy GP.
Well, there's no question. The jaw is locked in terms of getting that fourth Indy 500 win, because if it weren't, I don't know that he would be here testing. Now, explain what I mean by that, because this isn't the oval. This isn't the 2.5-mile oval. So what is the benefit for Elio to be here this weekend and run this test, despite the fact that what he's going to do in May is totally different than this?
It's the exact same reason why it's good for Conor Daly to be here listening in on the engineering debriefs. It's going through the procedures, the pulling out of pit lane, coming into pit lane, talking to your engineers, giving the feedback and working on developing a setup, because even though they're two completely different types of tracks, it's still the similar type of problem solving that you go through in an engineering. It's him getting familiarized with the car. Where's the paddle shifters? Where are all the buttons? And just having all that second nature is so crucial. Whereas if you jump in during the month of May, you're going to spend the first 2-3 days of practice just really getting up to speed. But this ensures that there'll be zero transition. And when he comes into the month of May, it's just focused right away on getting the ideal setup.
Marco Andretti among those turning laps on the course, along with the number 20 Evan Jones with Carpenter Racing this year. Patrick wants to know, Anders, IndyCar using the same curbing as F1, or are they doing anything different to prevent, dare I say, quote, track limits?
Well, at least the way it is right now, it's the same curbing, and that kind of goes in line here with another question that we got in. We were asked what the difference is between the green areas and the red portions. That's Thomas Gross asking what the red versus green portions of the asphalt right off the track mean. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. The one is to give the drivers a little bit of contrast so that when you run over the curb, you can see a clear definition of where that track limit is. The other thing is, from an officiating standpoint, it makes it a lot easier for an official to look at a camera and look at when a car leaves the curbing and has four wheels off the course. If there are any track limit violations, it's a lot easier for them to see if a car is fully off the track. So I think it's just for simplicity of enforcing the track limits, and also just for giving the drivers a bit better of a contrast when they run off the curbs.
Our good friend Chris Wheeler checking in at the Bell Pro Shop in downtown Speedway, getting some finishing touches, putting finishing touches on helmets for the Daytona 500. He says he's got us blaring on the loudspeakers at the shop. So always good to hear from Chris.
That's awesome. And there's a Bell driver right in our sight here. Graham Rahal going down the long back straightaway into that brake zone, turn 12. Look at how quickly he arrests that speed of the car into that corner and just flings it into the left. And now for that tricky double right-hander here, it's just a fantastic track. And look at how gingerly he has to get on power. The rear just wants to break loose, and then a little bit of trail braking in here as the corner gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And then first gear on power, and now it's full throttle all the way around turn 16, 17, 18, this triple right-hander. And he slingshots. Look at that, just comes out so quickly from that corner, and then into turn 19, which on Firestone red tires will be blisteringly quick.
And you know, the wide shot of that, if you noticed, we were focused on Graham Rahal, but you actually, from that vantage point, were able to see three different cars at three very different portions of the racetrack, which is what you talked about in terms of the sidelines.
It's wonderful. And I mean, if you're sitting inside that arena section there, if you're in the grandstand for turn 12, you can look across the track to the switchback section in turn 5, 6, 7, 8, and also obviously with the cars coming towards you in turn 11. So a lot of really, really good vantage points here. And I think the fans are going to be in for a treat here in March.
I would say that United Rentals paint scheme on Graham Rahal's car is a pretty nice fit, considering the red, white, and blue circuit of the Americas paint scheme that is in the runoff areas, especially around this racetrack. It looks pretty cool for sure. Let's talk about Graham Rahal in 2018. We talked about some of the disappointment maybe that Simon Pagenaud felt wanting better efforts. For the first time, he had the benefit of a teammate. And I think Graham is much in the same category as Simon Pagenaud, a guy that contended for championships for the 2 or 3 years prior to that. I think he wants to get back to that championship form this season.
Yeah, he is for sure. And I think they've had a lot of engineering meetings over the offseason to figure out exactly what they need to do that. Obviously, they felt like it was going to be a huge addition to the team by having another car in the form of Takuma Sato, and they felt like that was going to translate directly into better results for the team from the global perspective. But that wasn't the case, and except for that win at Portland, it really was a pretty difficult season for them. So I think they've had a lot of restructuring going on to try and figure out exactly what they need to do to be competitive from the get-go.
So Frederick S. Cairo II says, so we're talking about the curbing and whatnot. What will IndyCar do if a driver pulls a 2017 Max Verstappen pass? I believe that up in race control.
No, I hope they let it slide, because I personally think, and the pass that he's referencing there is the pass on the inside of turn 16, which was a beautiful overtake, and I hope that's one of those cases where the race director can say, you know what, that was not in danger to the other driver, and it was a clean pass, because I thought that was an absolutely beautifully executed pass on Max Verstappen's part. And now seeing Colton Herta, see, that's probably the corner right there where Colton Herta just was, the corner most likely to get a track limit violation. That's coming through, let's see, what is that, turn 9, where it's so easy to let the car drift out just a little bit too much. So I think that's probably the corner where we're going to see the most amount of track limit violations.
Again, we continue to be amazed, even all of the years we have access to it, just how small the world is. We want to say hello to Ben Johnston, who's tuned in from Sheffield in the UK. So Ben, thanks for joining us today for the test at COTA. It's just so cool that people from throughout the country and all around the world can enjoy what we're doing today.
For sure. And Ben asking, hi Anders, what are your impressions, your first impressions of COTA? Well, been here a few times before for different types of events, but it is just simply fabulous. It's a great facility. The track is amazing. I think it's going to be a fantastic venue for IndyCar racing. But just the facilities as a whole, I think as a spectator when you come here, it's just a first-class experience. There's always stuff to do all around the track. On the outside, there's actually a great kart track that I've driven a few times. I mean, that thing is seriously amazing. So if anyone's at the track here during the race weekend and have a bit of downtime, you should definitely go check that out. There's all these awesome barbecue spots on the inside, and obviously then I would challenge anyone to walk up or run up the steps to the tower that we saw briefly in the shot there, because that is a seriously daunting task.
There's a massive amphitheater here as well, and it has hosted concerts featuring some of the biggest names in show business. So you talk, and I believe they did their holiday light display here, just like they did at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and several other racetracks. And it's fascinating to me, the route that came in, I won't say it was a rural area, but it was not heavily populated. And you come over a hill and okay.
Yeah, and you have
here we are.
Yeah, this monstrosity of a facility. But the beautiful thing is we're 15 minutes away from downtown Austin.
That's right.
So the access is just so good here, and yet they have this huge area where they can do all these awesome things. And no, I'm a fan. So I can't wait for the race here in March.
So Mark Janes, Anders Krohn, Jake Query, happy to be with you as testing continues here at Circuit of the Americas. Felix Rosenquist is at the top of timing and scoring, and again, we really don't have much to go on in terms of knowing who's turning fast time, and we don't know how that will translate later on when we come back here for racing. We can tell you that a number of cars have now made their way out onto the racetrack. Colton Herta, Will Power, Ericsson, Andretti, Veach, and Pagenaud among those out. Chilton, Harvey, Peterson, Ed Jones, Joseph Newgarden. So as the session progresses, teams starting to take advantage now of the improving conditions. Not all that bad. I mean, rarely do you see a cloud in the sky, beautiful sunshine, but the temperature continues to climb. I think the forecasted high here today was in the low to mid-60s.
Yeah, it's going to be great conditions all day, and typical teams and drivers here, everyone want to wait for other people to go lay down the rubber for them. They don't want to do the hard work themselves. So I'm wondering if we could maybe talk to Jay Fry and have them implement some sort of rule that says every driver needs to do 20 laps before the first hour is done or something like that, just to encourage everyone to lay down some rubber, because there sure is a lot of waiting going on out here.
So Laced and Spencer Piggott have yet to turn a lap. Haven't seen Hinch yet. Alexander Rossi, we've talked to him. Ryan Hunter-Ray, I think, has turned at least one lap. And I believe perhaps Scott Dixon has turned at least one. So we're waiting for activity to pick up as this day progresses. We'll have another session this afternoon, and we expect that one to be the busier.
Yeah, I think that'll heat up really, really quickly. But in the meantime, we can at least take some more Twitter questions. And Mark Whiteleg is asking if any more engine manufacturers have been scouting around an IndyCar. And man, I wish we had Jay Fry alongside us here in the booth right now so he could give us the scoop. But we've obviously heard a lot of rumblings. I have no idea what the status of that is, but it's just positive to hear that those conversations are going on an ongoing basis, and hopefully by the time the new engine regulations come into play, there'll be another manufacturer there.
Okay, understanding my limitations, Yuri is checking in from the Netherlands, and I'm going to lay this on you to pronounce exactly where he's coming to us from.
Hoi Jori, hoe gaat het? Het is anders hier. Nederhorst en Berg. All right. So
okay.
There you go.
All right. Yep, that's not Monrovia. I can tell you that, folks.
So, Jori, apologies. It's been a while since I've been using my Dutch, so it's been a hot minute, but great to have you with us. Thank you so much, Jori.
So, Anders, another question comes in. Does any of today's testing, I don't know how this would work, but does any of today's testing count toward rookie orientation requirements for the Indy 500, or this just extra seat time for the driver?
Yeah, this is just extra seat time. So the Indianapolis 500 has a whole different rule set to it that doesn't apply here, and rightly so, because it is such a different beast. So they'll have to go through the 3 stages of the rookie orientation, and then they can be cleared to partake in official practice. So, but that will not come until the month of May.
F1 fan pit stop. F1 fans pit stop checking in, watching on YouTube in the UK. Loving IndyCar, looking forward to St. Pete. I think I am too.
Yes, yeah, I think that about sums it up just about right.
I mean, what a great way to start the season at St. Petersburg, and I mean, what Green Savory has done with that event over the years, and just watching the transformation that has taken place in downtown St. Pete, and I think that race deserves a plenty of credit for it. But I mean, it's a chance for everyone to start anew. Most of us associated with this series in one form or another live in a cold weather climate during the winter. And it's like an extended spring break for some of us.
It is for sure, and I'm still kicking myself to this day that I got rid of that apartment that I lived in St. Petersburg, which was right on the exit of Turn 3. So the walk into the paddock every single morning was just beautiful. And yet during these winter months, what was I thinking?
Well, I can tell you folks firsthand, he's all about convenience, because he was very adamant about putting together a radio network get-together at Christmas. And so we let him organize it. And so it was at a bar and restaurant in downtown Indianapolis. And once we got there, we found out that it was right across the street from where he lives. So he's all about it.
Well, I guess that's the benefit of being the organizer, right?
Yeah, especially because the place didn't offer ample parking for any of us. But no. So we do talk to one another during the off season, despite the belief to the contrary. Not a lot, but we do talk to each other. So.
Mateus laced, I think, here, dropping down Turn 2, and even that is such a steep hill there. So the car just accelerates that much quicker through Turn 2. Then you're into these super fast S's, and this is right about the moment where you need to do a quick downshift. One here where you need to move the car to the left a little bit, and then it's actually a fairly steep uphill right here. And here's where we have this track limit violation zone, if you want to call it that, where it's going to be very, very easy to run over those rumble strips, where the race director is going to have a couple of stationary cameras to track all the actions, because it's going to be a hot zone for sure.
So much different practice conditions than qualifying or race conditions. So for these drivers, you heard Max Chilton talk about kind of rededicating himself in terms of his conditioning and whatnot. After a day here, where do you think you're going to feel it the most physically?
Well, I always remember the first time back in a car after a long time out, where you feel it the most is in your shoulders and in your neck, because the neck muscles, even though that's something you can train fairly effectively in the gym, until you're in the car, all those forces on the neck are really, really difficult to simulate. And it's a bit similar when with the shoulders as well, as tightly confined as you are inside the car. So I think there's going to be a lot of drivers here at the end of the day, and especially as fast as the S's are here, it's going to be a lot of sore necks at the end of the day.
We mentioned earlier the good news. Conor Daly will be with Andretti Autosport with U.S. Air Force sponsorship. As Anders mentioned, he's here learning as much as he can from the engineering side. Let's hear more about all of that with Jake Query.
And here's the other good thing for Conor Daly, not just learning here, but also, if I'm not mistaken, you're hosting some folks from the U.S. Air Force, right?
Yeah, there's obviously an Air Force base nearby, and the marketing agency that works with the Air Force is based in Austin. So a lot of cool people here that came out for the month of May are are here with us this weekend, and obviously the U.S. Air Force is on all 4 Andretti cars as a team partner throughout the year. So it's pretty cool to be able to have fostered that program and grown it to where it is now. And we're with the best team that we possibly can be for the Indy 500. So I can't complain at all.
It's been obviously, Conor, I think well documented, but a trying, let's say, 5 to 6 months for you. What was the point where you almost thought to yourself, this may just not come together? Or was there that point?
Well, honestly, I want to be a full season driver again, and this is my 2nd year in a row where we're not a full season driver, which is tough. But I got to do more races than I thought I was going to do last year, which is great. So there was still some need to at least have me in a seat, which is cool. And now to be paired with Andretti, I think their business mindset, and they have a lot of incredible people who are really smart at trying to make deals happen, and we've got a great partner here, and we had 2 7-figure deals on the table before Christmas, and you hope that at least one of them works out, and one of them worked out, so that's great. And the other one we'd like to try and foster into something else, and it didn't quite work out the way we wanted it, but maybe it can turn into something else later in the year. I don't know, but I think a lot of it's going to be based on the Indy 500. If we can do well, if we can have a nice strong month, I would love to think of doing more races, and if the finances line up, then I'd like to line up as the driver as well.
With no disrespect to the opportunities you've had in the past, this is clearly going to be your best shot at Indianapolis and your best ride. Does that come with pressure?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the pressure's on, but I like that. I mean, I just listening in already to the guys' work and how they do things. I can already tell that it's just one of those top team mentalities, and I've driven for a lot of great people, and there's been a lot of great people that I've worked with, but we've always known that we weren't at that level, right? And we were trying to keep things in perspective, but the perspective here is first or nothing, you know what I mean? Like, you have to win, and that's awesome, and I like that. And they've obviously had success at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I'd love to be a part of that.
You mentioned the fact that the Air Force is involved with Andretti Autosport on the cars, but you've had a relationship with them. How much familiarity, what kind of comfort or security comes in that familiarity, and can you parlay that into more races this year?
Well, it's just about working hard at it. I mean, if I work at making sure that these guys get a return on what they put into this, then hopefully we can do more. And obviously last year what we put into it was good enough to warrant an upgrade in the whole situation, and that's awesome. And you when you have a partner like that who looks at something that they've done, they've spent money on, and saw that they got a return on it, like a really good return, then they want to do more. That's awesome. That's how this business is supposed to work. You're supposed to do your job, work hard, market something, do the job that they want you to do, and then hopefully continue that. So if we can do that again, it's a process. So hopefully we can work hard with all this whole team, Doug Bresnahan, everyone at the Andretti business sector, and just keep it going, because the U.S. Air Force car is going to look really cool. I can't tell you what it's going to look like, but it's going to look really cool, and it would be nice to have that car running full time.
What is your role this weekend?
I mean, honestly, I don't have a role. My role is to just be here and listen in and see how things work. Obviously, the people from the U.S. Air Force are here, so it's good to be interacting with them and sort of bringing them into the Andretti system as well. And I mean, why not, right? The deal I did with the team, they've been very helpful and very inclusive on having me at every race weekend and every test that I can get to. So that means a lot to me as well. It means that they at least want to have me around, and that's pretty cool.
Is there any sort of limitation on you contractually if an opportunity with another team comes up before Indianapolis?
Before Indianapolis is tough, only because of the number of engines that are available. So, unless someone, there's an injury or something, they have to approve it. But I think, they've made it known to me that if I have an opportunity to race, they usually don't stop people from doing that. So we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously highly unlikely, but they've been cool. They know what kind of situation I'm in, which is I've got to drive anything at any time, and I appreciate that for sure.
Watching the rest of the guys get in the cars and do this test, is it, obviously you can learn from it, is it fun, is it relaxing, or is it challenging because you want to get in there?
I hate it, man. I mean, especially when you got this beautiful logo on your chest and you know that there's some really good race cars right out there, but you just got to be patient. My time will come. April will come soon enough for the test, and that'll be a really rewarding experience, and I just got to be patient. That's it.
guys from the Air Force look pretty cool. We'll let you get back to hanging out with them.
Thanks, guys.
It's Conor Daly, Mark.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting at a time when over the past few years, the various branches of the military have stepped away a bit from motorsports advertising. This commitment, I think, speaks well for the relationship that they've developed with Conor Daly.
Yeah, it does for sure. And obviously, Conor Daly, all-American, and you know, I think they found a really good fit with him during the course of the event last year, and it was a tough event for Conor Daly. I mean, he was on
He's
the
not had a lot of luck in Indy.
No,
he really
exactly. And the fact that they feel like they've got a good representative in him is a great thing, and hopefully they can grow from here and build it into a program that's beyond just the Indy 500. Because even though an Indy 500 program is fantastic, I think your chances of succeeding in the Indy 500 are significantly higher if you're in a full season environment.
Jacob Quick with kind of a young guns question, if you will, Anders. The rookies, the young drivers coming into 2019, who will make the biggest splash this year? He points to Spencer Pigot and Matthias Leist, seeing what their second season will be like. But I think we've already hit on the guy that we think will probably have the best season in terms of the newcomers.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you have the two Swedes coming in with Felix and Marcus, and I think both of them will have a great opportunity. And obviously in Felix, he has the huge advantage of having Scott Dixon alongside him, who's obviously just a straight-up beast across the board. So I think that'll be huge for him. But let's not discount Colton Herta as well. I think he actually has a really good opportunity here to kind of have one of those seasons, a bit similar to what I keep thinking back to is Gabby Chavez with Brian Hurd Autosport back in 2014, when it was just one of those seasons where every single race he picked up momentum and got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think if Colton Herta can have that type of season, it'll be a great success for them as well.
How about the driver of the 26 car, Zach Veach? I mean, Gamebridge sponsorship this year, but tied in with the Indianapolis 500. What a meteoric rise it's been for Zach Veach over the past year or two.
Yeah, and talk about a guy that just had that nice progression during the course of the year last year, and I think this year is coming in very, very confident that he's going to be able to fight it out with his teammates on a consistent basis, both from a pace and a consistency perspective.
Yep, enjoying the questions for sure, and really appreciate the interaction that we've had to this point so far. Just about everyone has now made an appearance on track, but still waiting on Hinch to turn a lap. Still waiting, I believe, on Ryan Hunter-Ray and maybe Scott Dixon, but we're starting to get into double figures now with some of the drivers as this session proceeds, and we will wrap it up about, noon local time, a little after that, 1 o'clock Eastern, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see the running just start intensifying here in the last hour of this particular session. As the track temp comes up, I think they're going to feel like it's going to be a bit more representative of that of race weekend, so therefore they're going to roll the dice and head on out to the track. And had one question a little earlier if it's a good fan turnout, and there actually is. There's a lot of people up on the banks here, up in the few viewing areas as well. I saw a few people actually standing on the bridge that's on top of the S's, which is just a fantastic view, getting to see an IndyCar come at you at some 150 miles an hour. So a lot of people out here enjoying it, and it's sort of one of those days where you just get direct access. It's free access to the track today, so you get the opportunity to walk down to pit lane, see everything, and again, that's I've heard a lot of comments from Marcus Ericsson so far. He's blown away by the fan access that he's already seen in IndyCar, and just the fact that fans can walk right up to the pit box of every single team and interact with the crews and the drivers, and it's a fantastic opportunity if you're a first-time IndyCar fan or family coming out, this is a great chance to kind of get a grassroots understanding of what it's all about and then come back for the race weekend.
Not only fans, but Formula One drivers, when they make their first venture into the IndyCar series, one of the things that surprises them as much as anything is the interaction and the camaraderie between drivers in the pack. I mean, they all want to beat one another, but the interaction that they have surprises them, because that interaction does not exist in Formula One.
No, and to be honest, that was a huge eye-opener when I came over from racing in Europe, doing karts there and some Formula cars there, and coming over here was just how much closer everyone were, and it does feel like a family. And you know what? When you do 17 race events a year, that's kind of a nice thing to not hate everyone's guts. As Elio Castroneves here back on track and into the difficult intersection of the track here, turn 13, 14. Just look at this. Look at how difficult it is to put the power down. And now he's going to come down into turn 15, which just look at how much steering lock you need in the middle of the corner there. First gear, and then you're on that power, and then you do not lift up until you're in turn 19. Look at how quick this is. apex, and then you just let it roll right out, let that aero build up, and then you set yourself up for turn 19. Quick downshift there, then back on power, and there's actually a big drop off there as you go through turn 19 as well, so the car gets super light, and then another uphill for the final corner, and then on the power onto the front straightaway. Just a fantastic track. And look at this view now of turn 1. It is like a wall. You're approaching a wall. Look at how late that is, braking at the 200-foot mark, and it gets so light there, off camber, on power again, first, second, third, fourth gear here, and a little bit of a moment now, and into the S's here, turn 3, 4, 5, 6. Look at how quick the direction changes here. Quick downshift here, back on the power to stabilize the car, just grazing the brake here a little bit to gain a little bit of front grip. Another quick downshift, back on the power, and now turn 8. This is very, very difficult uphill here, and it's so important to get a straight shot of this because this drives you down to that brake zone for turn 11, which is going to be a great passing opportunity here. So very important to get a good run. And then look at how wide the track is here in the brake zone for turn 11, and just how early you turn in. A little bit too early there for Elio Castroneves. That would have disrupted his exit from the corner quite a bit. And now on the power down that long back straightaway, and this is where we can see all those amazing passes during the course of the weekend. Look at this, it's like the straightaway that just doesn't end. And again, so deep on the brakes there, 6th gear down to first, and running a bit wide. That just shows you right there, Mark, how low grip the surface is at the moment. It is crazy low grip.
Well done. I pride myself on knowing when to just shut up, let you do what you do. So, yeah, I mean, you literally put people into the cockpit of that race car.
That is good
Cool.
fun, and especially fun seeing under these low grip conditions, because usually when we do these things, it's Firestone reds. The cars are at their absolute peak, and the drivers have had so many laps to get up to speed. Not the case here. This is Elio Castroneves' first few laps in figuring this place out, and just shows you how difficult it is.
So explain to me the difference in these turns of the car and how it's behaving. There's sometimes when it looks like he's reached the apex of the turn that he's really fighting the wheel. The wheel wants to come back on him, but on other portions of the track it's really smooth. He can lock it and leave it locked until it's time to straighten it up.
Yeah, and typically when you have a car that's very, very compliant and one that you feel super comfortable with, is one that you can continually keep adding that steering input all the way down to the apex, adding a bunch of steering input. The Firestone tires absolutely love it when you give that extra little bit of flick to the steering wheel, as we see Ryan Hunter-Reay just did there in turn 15. That really sets the tire up, gains a lot of grip, and then you can accelerate out from there. But when you have the car a little bit on top of the surface, as we saw in the case of Elio Castroneves, that means that you can't add that steering lock in the middle of the corner, and that means you can't truly get to the maximum G load of what the tires can sustain. So maybe it's just a situation for Elio Castroneves where his car is set up maybe with a slightly stiffer setup or a little bit too aggressive on the camber settings, where the track will come to him once it rubbers up, but certainly for the moment it looks like a little bit too much on top of the surface, whereas Ryan Hunter-Reay, who runs a bit wide there in turn 1, looked a bit more comfortable in the infield of the track, just able to add a little bit more steering input and feels a little bit more comfortable with the direction change here, and especially here through the S's. This is looking fairly efficient for Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Loving the increased sponsorship commitment, the relationship between Andretti Autosport, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and DHL. It's nothing now in central Indiana to be driving around and see those delivery trucks with that car on the side.
I see him every single day.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's a long relationship now. They've been together for a number of years, and Ryan Hunter-Reay is, I think, another one of those guys, along with Simon Pagenaud, that's kind of looking at Graham Rahal, looking for, at the very least, a more consistent season than what they had last year. And unfortunately for Ryan Hunter-Reay, and not to say that Simon and Graham were to blame for some of the woes, because it is a team sport after all, but he just seemed like he had some rotten luck last year.
Oh, he did for sure, but when you looked at the peaks of his season, I mean, he was unstoppable in that second race at Detroit. Absolutely unstoppable, and the same exact thing at Sonoma. So I bet he just wanted that season to continue for another 10 weekends, because the speed he showed in Sonoma was astonishing, and I think he can most definitely be a championship contender again this year.
There's a lot of folks that are really happy about some of the liveries on the cars this year. We have the traditional looks, as we mentioned, of Ryan Hunter-Reay and ABC Supply, and of course the Penske liveries, and now but the ones that are the newer ones, the Gamebridge getting a lot of run, the sponsorship and delivery on Zach Veach's car.
Yeah, as we see a little bit of an off moment here for Ryan Hunter-Reay. Again, trying to really challenge those brake zones. And you see a little bit of a lock up there, top of the hill into turn one. And it is a very difficult brake zone because you have all that advantage from that uphill. But then as soon as you crest that hill and you go towards the apex, everything drops off and the car gets super light. So you have to be super quick with your brake release there, not to lock up the wheels. As we see Scott Dixon now taking to the track. So let's see what he can do. Obviously, Felix Rosenqvist already with some really quick laps in the bank.
Questions earlier about young guns. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about Colton Herta. What's the expectation level of Colton?
Again, I think I keep coming back to the fact that he just needs to progress every single weekend. I don't think there's any set expectation. It's obviously still a fairly new team in Harding Steinbrenner Racing, and they have a lot of development to do. And I think what they really just need to look at is, are we getting closer to the leaders every single weekend? And if they are, then they can cap off 2019 and say it was a great season.
Now, Zachary Clayman has gone back to Indy Lights this season, made a couple of appearances last year. And I mean, we've seen this before. We've seen Sebastian Sveder do it. We've seen Zach Veach do it. We've seen drivers return for a second, even third season in Indy Lights with $1 million up for grab for a scholarship. That's not a bad move for a guy that really didn't have anything firmed up for the NTT IndyCar.
I think it's better to have a quality season in Indy Lights than to try and piece something together that maybe isn't ideal. So yeah, I think that's great here for Zach.
Okay, let's get an update on pit road from Jay Query.
Mark, thanks. You had mentioned earlier that Ryan Hunter-Reay and James Hinchcliffe were two of the last ones really to go out here and turn laps. Let's take a look in here on this number 5 machine of James Hinchcliffe. Now, again, this is Aero Schmidt Peterson Motorsports, and James Hinchcliffe, as you see, they work on the balance of the rear of the car. But the reality is this. There's no real need or panic at this time from the team to go out and turn a lot of laps. That's because simply of the Firestone Firehawks. The veterans here get 8 sets of tires. Rookies will get 9. That's to last them over the course of the 2 days. So Hinch helping out with his teammate. Of course, his teammate, one of the rookies of which we speak, that's Marcus Ericsson. But Hinchcliffe was here on the fruit stand. He's now in the car. He did take an install lap. As you see, they might be preparing to take that number 5 machine out. But it's all about preserving those tires right now, Mark. So it might be a busy afternoon and a busy day tomorrow as well for James Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, we kind of suspected that the afternoon session would be the busier of the two as conditions continue to improve. But again, a beautiful blue sky here at Circuit of the Americas. A gorgeous start. A little on the chilly side when we first got here, but the temperature is expected to be somewhere in the middle 60s this afternoon. And I think they'll be happy with those conditions in which to test.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. And rubber just keeps coming down, and so will the lap times. And we have a few more questions coming in on Twitter. We have Stephen Kemp and let's see, another couple of people here asking about the situation of Pato Ward and whether there's any more clarification on where he's going to take that scholarship. Obviously, he has that $1 million from winning the Indy Lights scholarship from last year. And at the moment, and in having spoken to Pato briefly yesterday, he doesn't have anything firmed up at this moment. And but he is walking up and down Paddock pretty frantically trying to line something up. And if it's not for a full season, hopefully for a solid part-time season at this point. So
I think even after the announcement yesterday, he said even a couple of race teams reached out to him immediately. So.
Yeah, no, and they should, because what he showed at Sonoma, I mean, yeah, what he showed in Indy Lights last year was great, but what he showed at Sonoma by qualifying 5th and racing just so well was incredible. So yeah, he's going to be a rock star for sure.
Another one of those that has can't miss written all over him, but it's unfortunate for him to be exposed to the harsh realities of the business side of this sport. But again, his talent and the fact that he has that money should make him attractive. It's unfortunate that this happened so late.
Yeah, no, and that is the unfortunate thing about this. Had this happened in November, there would have been well, I don't want to say ample time, but there would have been sufficient time to put a full season deal together. But at this point, all the full season teams are locked up, so now it's now a matter of him figuring out, can a full-time team absorb me in a full-time manner? Is it going to be a part-time thing? Is it going to be something that maybe starts in the month of May and for the rest of the season from there? So yeah, you just hope for his sake that he's able to kind of display his talents during the course of the year in some way, shape, or form.
Testing over the course of the last 4 or 5 days or so at both of the new venues on the schedule. The historic Laguna Seca will be the season finale. What do we know about where we'll wrap up the season in 2019?
Well, we know it's a challenging track, and in having spoken briefly to Sebastian Bourdais after the test, he said zero grip, absolutely zero grip at that track. And part of that, it's the middle of winter. There's a bunch of club racing going on, so there's no real rubber being laid down, but it's also due to the very abrasive form of that asphalt at that track. So I think that's going to be a very, very difficult track, and in a way somewhat similar to Sonoma, where it never truly grips up, and it's going to be so much about mechanical compliance. And obviously we've seen some historic races from Laguna Seca. I think it's going to be a very, very tricky track, and one that's going to reward the driver that's able to put all the sectors together at the same time having a car that's massively compliant over that very, very low grip surface.
A successful return to Portland last year. I think everybody had to give that weekend a thumbs up.
100. It actually blew everyone away. I mean, it was my very first time to the track, my very first time to the city, and it was just crazy how the entire city just got behind it, and it was a sold-out event, and the race was just about as crazy as we could have thought. We thought Alexander Rossi was going to win the championship, then he got held up. We thought Scott Dixon was going to DNF, then he somehow miraculously made it to a top 5 finish. It had everything that you wanted, so I'm excited to get back there.
I think that melee that he got in the middle of came through it absolutely unscathed. Not only that, but there was an opening just big enough for him to get his car through and get back out onto the track. And the championship was over at that point.
Yeah, it really was.
I mean, no one else was going to win.
It was meant to be at that point that
right.
It was going to be Scott Dixon's championship. More often than not, he makes his own luck. But in that particular case, he received a whole bunch of luck, and he made the most of it to win the championship. As we now have Mayor of Hinchtown, James Hinchcliffe, out on track and getting up to speed here. And the good news for him is he will already have quite a bit of data from Marcus Ericsson, who's been doing laps earlier in this session. So they would have probably already applied the same changes that they've made to Marcus Ericsson's car to that car of James Hinchcliffe before he even turned a single lap. And so he's going to have that benefit of not going in stone cold. He's going to have a little bit of data to rely on.
Now, and you talk about that data, all of this data, but is there any of this at all other than just the process of maybe rolling into a facility, getting set up, getting everyone back into the routine of this? So this weekend will serve as a good test to get ready for St. Pete, but in terms of the data and information about the car and the racetrack won't be used until they come back here for the race.
Well, you say that, but then you heard what Simon Pagenaud said. You always learn something, and it could be something as small as a traction issue that maybe you had in street courses, and suddenly you figure something out with a shock setting or with a spring split on the car, or even with downforce setting that enables you to get a little bit better traction off a corner. And yeah, even though it's a completely different setup on the car, what you learn in the setup direction may actually help you. So I think every single mile you do around a racetrack, you have to keep track of, and you have to figure out that data and how that can apply to any type of track.
Okay, so James Hinchcliffe works his way around the racetrack, and again, in an effort to get you a little closer to the action, we would like to be able to get hooked up with Hinch as he takes a lap around this massive facility and get you a little up close and personal, get you a little idea. Of course, Anders did a magnificent job of describing what a lap was like around this racetrack. He was beautifully describing the issues that Elio had. So let's hop on board with James Hinchcliffe for a lap around COTA. talk about places, Anders, where a driver gets a chance to maybe breathe or flex a little bit. I think we just saw one of those. As you mentioned, it's the straightaway that seemingly never ends.
Yeah, it really is, and almost sort of similar duration to that of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So yeah, it definitely gives you a chance to look it down at all the gauges, make any changes to the car that you might want. There's a lot of adjustment inside the car that the drivers can do, from fuel trim to front roll bar to rear roll bar on the car. So there's a lot of options that the driver has, and that's the perfect opportunity to make that change inside the cockpit there. And a very, very interesting lap on board with James Hinchcliffe, and again, just seeing how smooth he has to be with the input in the car, and it's sort of just seeing the difference between him and Ryan Hunter-Reay can tell you a lot of detail on how different these cars are set up. I think Hinch's car is probably a little more on the stiff side compared to that of Ryan Hunter-Reay, because you see he has to just be a little bit more careful with all the steering input in his car, whereas Ryan Hunter-Reay could be a bit more aggressive. So that means that their car is probably set up a bit better to a slightly low grip setting than that of Hinch's car. And we now have Alexander Rossi rolling down through the S's, and just look at how free the rear end of his car is. That was sort of the MO for Alexander Rossi during the course of the year last year, just how the rear rotates so well for him. You always see the rear kind of dancing around in the corner, and that means he can use less steering input than most people in the corners. That means he can get to a straight steering wheel quicker than anyone else, and on the power quicker off the corner. So I think that's what we're going to be looking for here with Alexander Rossi, is how quickly can he get the car rotated here, open up your hands, and then on the power off the corner. And that's certainly something that we saw with Alexander Rossi at the street courses this year, and we know he's trying to adapt that into the road course style as well.
Kind words from Wingside Up enjoying the coverage today, Anderson. We appreciate the thoughts, and glad that they're able to be with us today. A lot of folks checking in. Our good friend Diane Squintal, one of the best in the business at what she does for sure. Her and her husband Jim, of course, motorsport's been a big part of their life for a long, long time, and anxious to be able to spend time. It's one of the things this business does is put you in contact with some of the nicest people, and I think Jim and Diane certainly fall into that category.
100%. Look forward to seeing both of you at St. Pete. Can't come soon enough. Kyle here is asking if we'll see the digital numbers for position back on the side of the cars by St. Pete. I actually haven't heard a firm direction on that, Mark. Have you?
Well, I think the effort is undertaken to get that situation solved. I mean, that's something that once it was here and it went away, people, for our pit guys, for instance, I mean, it actually timed the pit stop for them, which was a big help. But it's huge, I think, for fans to be able to see, the position of that car if they don't have access to a timing and scoring pylon. And I believe efforts are undertaken to try to come up with a solution for that, and hopefully one will come in the very near future. That'd be great to have that back for sure.
And we have Bob Traina asking if anyone's asked Marcus Ericsson what it's like to switch from F1 to IndyCar at a track like Coda, and the answer to that is no, but we will be sure to ask during the lunch break, because I think that is one of the bigger talking points here is just how difficult that has got to be, and going from such a high downforce car such as Formula One, and also with superb kind of rubber conditions during those F1 weekends, and the amount of grip that you have compared to now when you have a completely green racetrack. There's been a bunch of rain, there's been a bunch of club racing, so there's essentially zero grip. So it'll be interesting to hear from his perspective, what he feels like that transition is like. And to some extent, I've gone to tracks where I've driven before in a completely different type of car, and it's almost more difficult than coming to an entirely new track, because you're kind of having to unlearn some what were good habits in that car but are actually bad habits in this car.
Yeah, others will say it's a confidence boost, especially if it's a place where you won, because you just feel confident walking into a place in which you won. But I've also heard that point that you made. You can lull yourself into a false sense of security, especially if the setup of the race car, the nature of that beast, if you will, is vastly, vastly different. But now you may not have heard him earlier. We talked to Max Chilton, for instance, and one of the things that Max said he likes about this course so much is this is the kind of course that he had the most experience on when he was driving, in Formula One and coming up through those ranks. So even though this is a vastly different car, clearly Max feels very, very comfortable with the course of this setup.
He does, but don't forget, where was Max Chilton's first win in the U.S.? That was at Iowa Speedway in an Indy Lights car, and it doesn't get much more different than European road courses than that. So Max Chilton certainly may be more comfortable here.
Well, Sato took to Iowa right away when he first came over from Formula One. Takuma Sato ran well at Iowa and was very, very comfortable there. So I guess. So explain this, then, when drivers will say sometimes about a place, well, it drives a little like a road course. What do they mean by that? How could a place in the middle of corn country in Iowa feel anything at all like a Formula One circuit?
Well, I think the reason for that is you're running the full downforce setting, and it's so high banked that you can be very aggressive with your steering input, whereas in place like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Texas Motor Speedway, you have to be a lot more subtle with your inputs. So it's almost like at a super speedway, the car has to drive itself around the corner, and you want to use as little steering input as possible, whereas at Iowa Speedway, you have to put a lot of steering input in. So if you get the rear end really, really nice and secure, and you feel like you can do the work with the hands, then it will feel somewhat similar to a road course, but it's still a long, long way from Spa-Francorchamps or one of these historic European venues.
That's the 19 of Santino Ferrucci, Dale Coyne. And boy, you got to give Dale Coyne a lot of credit. He's a long way from the entry list at St. Petersburg, one of the cars saying TBD, right?
He is, and I don't know that we've seen a formal announcement on Santino Ferrucci, but certainly good to see him back in the car. Showed some flashes of speed during his partial season last year. So. And look at that bling of that chrome out there. That's
a little shiny, isn't it?
That's a sight to behold.
You know
cool.
When the sun's shining when that car's on the racetrack for sure. It dances off all four corners of it.
Yeah. Sequential Racer is asking, it seems the teams are running a lot more side pod blocking. How does that affect downforce? Does it push more air under the car? So, not exactly sure if it produces a lot more downforce, but it does make the car significantly quicker in a straightaway, because essentially there's now that area is blocked off and just enabling the air to go around, so it will make it quicker down the straightaway. Not sure though what the exact effect that'll have on the overall downforce.
Got about 30 minutes remaining in this session. And we now have all takers, I believe, those that have been out. We've seen a number of drivers wait and see the tire management game, but as Anders also expressed, of course, the grip level continues to go up as laps continue to be turned here. Scott Dixon has gone to the top of timing and scoring, and it's a healthy show when you can put 25 cars on track for spring training test.
Yeah, it really is, and already we're seeing just how close it is, and so we have the top 15 cars here within a second. So that's fantastic news here, and they're really just getting started. So that shows how close of a show it's going to be when it's really game time and full qualifying simulation. But no surprise to see Scott Dixon top of the charts. But look at this boy, Colton Herta, P2, only 8/1000ths of a second off Scott Dixon, and obviously partially helped by the fact that he's done quite a few laps this morning.
Another full day of testing scheduled for tomorrow here at COTA, and then before you know it, it's going to be time to head to St. Petersburg, Anders.
Let us do it. Should we just move St. Pete up to next week? That'd be pretty ideal. I'd want to just leave straight from here and go down to St. Pete.
Well, as we mentioned before, what they're doing, Green Safari Promotions in the city of St. Petersburg with that event each and every year. I mean, it just continues to grow in popularity. It's a big party, and the track build already started. A lot of events connected with that race. The weekend passes, single tickets available for all races, in fact. So a lot of folks make that part of their spring break plan, and it's always a great way to kick off the weekend, and we look forward to it for sure.
No, absolutely. And we have Marvin Blue saying hi from Ohio, and he's asking what it's like seeing these IndyCar drivers testing at COTA. It's awesome. It is just awesome. Our booth looks straight out onto the exit of the final corner. That's turn 20, and it's just awesome to see how they're trying to get that power down all the way from first gear and just frantically working on the steering wheel, working on the pedals to try and get the power down, and then they disappear out of our view. But by the time they disappear out of our view, they're doing some 150 miles an hour and up into fourth gear. So yeah, it's a sight to behold, and great to see them on the screen here. But let me tell you, if you haven't been out to COTA, You need to come here to truly appreciate this place. It's spectacular.
We do want to make mention that it'll be April 24th. A couple of people have sent in questions wanting to know when the test was scheduled for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that's looking like that late April date of April the 24th. So that'll give you a little look-see as to what the testing schedule looks like moving forward.
Yes, indeed. And Holly Smith saying that drive by Hinchtown at Coda was lit. Indeed it was, wasn't it, Mark James?
Yeah, it was fun to watch for sure. That's a great camera angle. Over the past couple of years, the driver's helmet cam and also that nose cone cam, if you will, that I think has changed, the way that we're able to bring fans a little closer to what that driver experience is like. And I do like the in-car cameras right over the top of the driver's head where you get a good look down into the cockpit like we're seeing with Elio right now. I mean, you can't get much closer to the action than that.
No, you really can't. And this is actually a great opportunity for us to see here if they've made any changes to that car of Elio Castroneves. And right as I say that, he had an almighty moment there and just cannot get the power down. And looks like the rear, anytime he tries to do anything, the rear just snaps away from him. So I wouldn't be surprised if they need to make some significant changes to the mechanical balance. And, runs off the track here in turn 16, 17, 18. And that's a direct result of not being able to use, as we talked about, use that steering wheel, be a bit more aggressive with it, really trust the rear end. So he's going to come to pit lane here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to go to work fairly aggressively. Oh, and he even slides wide here. Coming into pit lane, Elio Castroneves.
Using all the racetrack.
Welcome back to IndyCar. It is great to have you back, but no, they're going to have to make some fairly significant changes here to the back of the car. And the typical first move you go to when you have a rear end that's that loose and that unpredictable is you'll go with softer rear springs.
Jake Query, you're right there as Elio pulls onto pit road.
Elio Castroneves has pulled onto pit road. That is correct, Mark. And let's revisit exactly what we're seeing here in the three-time Indianapolis 500 champion and four-time runner-up in the NTT IndyCar Series in Elio Castroneves. There might be some curiosity from fans saying, wait a minute, is this a sign that number 3 machine might be seeing more time on track in this upcoming season? The answer as of right now is still no. It would be an Indianapolis 500 only effort for Elio Castroneves. So why exactly is that machine out here at Coda? The answer is very simple. Even though Castroneves is obviously one of the great veterans here of this series, seat time, and Anders can perhaps expand on this, but seat time is always so very important in just refamiliarizing yourself. In addition to that, for Roger Penske and the team, when you think about Joseph Newgarden, Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, why not go ahead and take advantage of the resource of a fourth driver and someone, of course, as knowledgeable as Elio Castroneves to accumulate as much data as possible? So that's the reason why we see the popular and the gregarious Brazilian who sits in the car right now here at the Circuit of the Americas. They're going to take a look over that machine. They just put on some brand new Firestone Firehawks, and I anticipate, Mark, that we will see Elio Castroneves back out on track shortly.
Yeah, but whenever, wherever, however, I'm okay with it. But it will let you expand on exactly what Jake was talking about. We touched upon it earlier, the advantages of having Elio in the car this week.
Yeah, and it is just to go through those procedures, work with the engineers, get as close as possible so that all of that stuff is out of the way so that you're not rusty behind the wheel, even though it is a completely different track. And plus, I just thought about this. If Roger Penske calls and says, hey, would you want to do 2 days of testing at Coda in an IndyCar? What's the answer going to be?
Yeah, well, and I think Jake made a very, I think, valid point in the fact that I would imagine that Joseph Newgarden, Simon Pagenaud, and Will Power are all going to listen to anything and everything that Elio has to say.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the guy's seen it all. He's done it all. So, yeah, his input is going to be just so valuable. But I think also just for him, it's a matter of getting up to speed with the engineers and everything. But then it's also just go out there and have some serious amount of fun and show off that awesome-looking Pennzoil car.
Marvin Blue III checking in. It wants to know our opinion of what it's like seeing the IndyCar drivers testing in Coda. Wants to know if we can get a shout out. He says hi from Ohio, so we'll say hi to Marvin Blue III. And I can give you a one-word answer. Cool. It's cool.
That's about
no
all
other
you
way
need.
to describe it. You know.
And then Shoko Feel, I might be saying that wrong, saying looks like sausage curbs to enforce track limits. As we see Colton Herta here is going to be locking up the outside front tire coming into the brake zone for turn 12. That's a no-no. You do not want those tires to be square. You want them to be round. But Shoko Field is saying, looks like the sausage curbs to enforce track limits at the exit at the last turn and other few places at Kodak. Can you confirm? Yes, that is indeed correct. They have those in place. And, yeah, you certainly do not want to touch those with an IndyCar. With a GT car, you can get away with it. But in an IndyCar, you will bottom out right away and potentially also do some damage to the carbon fiber tub. So, yeah, you do not want to touch those.
Yeah, but most of the curbing, as we mentioned, they know where they can and can't go. They figured that out already, and they use it plenty. They use it plenty, and so far Colton Herta continues to turn some pretty impressive laps early on in the run.
Yeah, he is really, and if you look at the difference between how he uses his steering input compared to that of Elio Castroneves, look at how much more steering input he feels comfortable using in the middle of the corner. So that means they have this car a little bit more compliant for these low grip settings, and you see he can actually use a lot of steering input. He actually probably has a little bit too much understeer, because you notice here in that really slow hairpin there, he had to keep adding steering input past the apex point, past the point where you want to clip the curb and thereafter quickly unwind your hands. So I think Colton Herta, it's a better place to start with a car where he's at, where it's a little bit on the understeery side, where it at least gives you the security, and then you can work on freeing the car up and making it rotate a bit better. Whereas in Elio Castroneves' case, yeah, it's just like a wild beast on top of the surface. So a pretty good baseline, I think, here for Harding Steinbrenner Racing. And just look at that amount of steering input. Oh, Colton Herta, you're going to wear out the front tires on this thing.
How long will the debrief be after this session in preparation for session number 2? Is it going to be lengthy because of the fact this is everyone's first really good solid look at this?
If you ask any driver and any engineer, they cannot get enough hours in the day to debrief. So they will literally use every single moment from when they step out of the car until they're back in the car again debriefing. And they have these set debriefing times, and they'll disappear into the trailers and they'll pour over this data for hours on end. And the same will be the case at the end of the day today. They're going to sit down for hours and hours and hours to come up with a plan of attack. And the drivers will review their own driving with their driver coaches on video and data, seeing how they compare to their teammates. And then the engineers as well would go through with the drivers, asking them, what area can you help us with your driving, and what area can we help you with the car to come up with the best setup that's compliant and an all-round effective package. So there are so many streams of data to go through, both from a driver perspective as well as that from a car perspective. So that's why you have these huge engineering groups, some of which are dedicated to just fine-tuning the driver, and that is in all the brake release and how you apply the throttle and how aggressively you turn into the corners. And then there's all the car-based stuff that measures the downforce. There's load cell sensors in every single push rod here that measures the downforce levels and the ride heights, and tire pressure sensors and tire temperature. There's all this data that the engineers have to absorb to figure out exactly, okay, how can we make the car better?
How much will you do you speculate in all of those adjustments in the setup on a race car? How much do you think that changes over the course of, say, for instance, this day?
Massive, absolutely massive. There is no way that you as a team will not experiment with very, very different packages during the course of the day. And even in the case of, as we see now, Zach Veach to the top of the charts, but even in the case of someone like a Scott Dixon, who fairly quickly went to the top of the charts, I bet you he's back in the paddock right now, probably putting on a very different package, because you need to go through those different packages to kind of rule out the overall different package alternatives, and then you'll land on a package that you can then sort of more fine-tune. But there are so many thousands of combinations that you can do that you can't penalize yourself by saying, oh, actually, I think we're in a good spot right here, we're just going to fine-tune here. So they really need to go down those broad avenues first to figure out the base, and from there they can fine-tune.
So we talk about this during qualifying during the season, or maybe during that final practice session before you go qualifying. Sometimes you see a team literally roll the dice in an effort to make something happen during qualifying, and it ends up going the wrong direction. a session like this that helps you maybe avoid that potential for that kind of disaster when you get here for a race weekend.
100%, and that's actually, you want to find a package that's slower because that eliminates an option for you. So,
Okay.
so yeah, you want to have that contrast of something that gives you the pace right away and something that is compliant, and maybe something that's too edgy, because you don't know when you come back for the race weekend if the track is significantly grippier and you're doing 2-3 seconds a lap faster, then maybe that edgy setup that didn't work at all on a green track will actually come back and work for you later on. So it's so important to find those different avenues and know what works for different types of conditions.
Watching Scott Dixon. PNC Bank as a company has to feel like timing is everything, huh? Coming on board and winning the series championship. I mean, and boy, I tell you, for Ganassi Racing, so closely associated with their previous sponsor for so many years, to land this one and be able to do it in a year in which they won a championship, I think not only huge, obviously, for Ganassi Racing, but huge for PNC Bank as well.
Yeah, and huge for sort of further solidifying Scott Dixon as an absolute legend of the sport as well. And the season that he put together last year, I mean, just think about how much they struggled, relatively speaking, in qualifying last year. ISM Raceway, where did he qualify? 18th, drove his way into the top 5. And that was sort of the theme of the season, is if they didn't have the pace, somehow, some way, through strategy or just Scott Dixon's cunningness, they would just find their way to the front, and yeah, that is the magic of them, because I think if you look at it as a whole, they were not the quickest combination during the course of the year last year.
The longevity with this race team is staggering, quite frankly, and I don't know that it will ever be duplicated. And you're talking about a history of some of the greatest open wheel drivers ever that have been with Ganassi Racing at one time or another, and this guy's at the top of the heap in terms of longevity, and people forget just how very young he was when he came to open wheel racing, and it's still, I don't know that it's accurate to describe him yet as a grizzled veteran, Anders. I mean, how many more years can this guy win races? It's unbelievable. He's still a relatively young guy.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to keep going for many, many years to come, and as long as he's competitive and keeps winning championships, why wouldn't you?
One thing's for sure, he has reached rarefied air in terms of open wheel racing history, and I think those of us that have had the opportunity to watch him from when he first came to this series are going to be talking about him long after when and if he decides to hang that helmet up, and be pleased with the fact that we witnessed a legend being made before our very eyes.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think if you now tuned in to racecontrol.indycar.com or just indycar.com and watching the live timing, I think we've already got a sneak peek into how big of a difference new tires to all tires is going to be. Marcus Ericsson just went to P1 with 7/10 ahead of R.C. Enerson and 9/10 ahead of Zach Veach. So I think that's going to be another huge talking point during the race weekend here in the races, just how big that tire degradation is. And with the amount of weather that this area gets, this surface is fairly abrasive, and with these corners being such long duration corners, it puts a huge strain on the tires. So I think already now we're seeing, so let's call it a 1 second gain here from old Firestone tires to new tires. Imagine then the peak of the Firestone red tires would typically find you another half a second, but then controversially, think about just how big the drop-off is going to be on the Firestone red. So I think that's going to be another fascinating picture to look at going into the race weekend.
We have gotten more response over referencing chrome than to anything else we've said. People are loving that for sure. A lot of responses to
Santino Ferrucci is ahead. He is ahead.
Yeah.
No, that car is pretty. And between that and the Sealmaster car here in the shot of Sebastian Bourdais, it's going to be pretty difficult to miss the two Dale Coyne cars. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think our guys that'll be out on the course of the season, they certainly appreciate liveries like that. They like Ryan Hunter-Reay's because you can see that from a long way away, and then whatever Simon Pagenaud is in that highlighter color with his car, they're always always very appreciative of that. And when Matthias Leist and Tony Kanaan are running together on the course, that gets a little tougher, because those cars are so closely matched. But I mean, look at that car from Simon Pagenaud. You see that thing from a long way away with that Menard sponsorship and that color scheme.
Yes, indeed. And I've been a spotter at the Indy 500 before and had cars be fairly similar to each other, and it makes your job as a spotter very, very difficult. But I would want to be Simon Pagenaud spotter at the Indy 500 with that livery.
Well, he's been in the broadcast booth as a driver analyst. He's been a pit reporter for us at Long Beach, but for his second season, he's a full-time NTT IndyCar Series driver. Jake has caught up with Zach Veach.
Zach Veach, I'll tell you what, obviously you got a pretty fast car, but let's begin by talking about this circuit itself. How much fun was it? What are the challenges here?
It's difficult because all the corners tie into each other. So from turn 3 all the way to turn 9, if you get one thing wrong, it throws the entire lap away, because the speed of 4 goes to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. So it's hard to stay on your toes. Right now, I think, yeah, we're okay. We still got a lot of work to do. There's some things I definitely would like better with the car. But it's cool to be here at COTA. There's tons of fans here already, so I think that's good for when we come back in March.
How much over the course of a session, let's say in the last hour and a half, how much does the car change? You realistically are driving how many different cars over the course of a stint, if that makes sense?
Yeah, this lap's so long, it feels like you drive 3 different cars from the finish line to the trip back around. So for us, it just keeps getting hotter and hotter, so that's going to make the car a lot more of a handful. And on top of that, we're changing so much right now because the track time everyone's had here is pretty limited. So we're all trying to find that ultimate race-winning balance. And, you know, some of us are closer than others, I think, but we still got a long way to go.
Realistically, I think a lot of people were pleasantly surprised by your performance a year ago. I think I'm talking to the one guy that wasn't surprised by that and anticipated it. How do you build on it?
You know, it just goes back to the fundamentals of what made it good in the first place. It's just learning as much as I possibly can from the people around me. And we spent all winter long looking at data traces from each individual weekend. And I just feel like I have a book full of knowledge now. I just got to make sure I use it the best I can and have an even better 2019.
You've got a sponsor in Gamebridge that now is also the title sponsor of the biggest race in the world, the Indianapolis 500. Got to be pretty cool to have those guys on board.
It's very special. You know, Dan Toweris with CEO of Group 1001 in Gamebridge. He obviously loves racing, and we were the one that brought him into this world. So it's exciting building that relationship with him, and hopefully we can make history and be the first presenting sponsor car to win the presenting sponsor of the Indy 500.
As we wind down this session and look towards this afternoon, what changes are you looking for? What can you learn this afternoon that you didn't grasp this morning?
I think the main thing is just trying to get the balance a little more even. Right now it seems we're fighting the fronts a little more than the rears occasionally, and then vice versa later in the stint. So we got a lot to do to just tie everything together.
You got 8 sets of tires. How tire sensitive is this track?
You get about 2 laps, and then from that point on, it just goes downhill. So it becomes very important to get that clean qualifying run. And, you know, I think we did our fastest lap here on lap 4 or 5. So there's definitely a lot left in it that we got to get.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Zach Veach.
Yeah, that Honda Racing cap is not average. That's a pretty cool that Zach Veach had on there. By the way, Paige checks in, says the time from when we started today until her lunch bell rang at work, the time flew by for her. So we're happy to. So we can also get you to the end of the day. If you want to join us at 3:30 Eastern this afternoon, we can get you to the final bell and send you home with the second round of testing. Again, it's live today at 3:30 Eastern.
Well, Paige is saying the time's flown by for her. It has flown by for us as well. Here we are with only 5 minutes left in this session, and it feels like we've only just got started. But yeah, just a great day here, and such a great opportunity for us to be live on IndyCar.com, getting the insights from the drivers, and for the fans to have the opportunity to go behind the scenes and get to know the drivers and teams a little bit better. So very, very excited for the session this afternoon. And great note there from Zach Veach on the fact that the tires, only last for roughly 2 laps, and that's the Firestone Blacks. We haven't even touched the Firestone Reds, which we know provide even more grip, even quicker, but they fall off just just so much more aggressively. So I think that's going to be a huge talking point coming into the race weekend.
And do want to correct something from earlier. Mentioned Elio Castroneves running the Indianapolis 500. He's actually doing the IndyCar Grand Prix and the Indianapolis 500 in the month of May. So you Elio fans, you'll be able to see him all throughout the month of May, as you did 1 year ago, and that's, as we said, that's certainly great news. So your thoughts and impressions of this session, can you glean anything from what we see from timing and scoring? What do you see in timing and scoring that you've seen on the racetrack?
Well, I think Marcus Ericsson wants the championship to be done right now. It's just
great point.
Because he's at the top of the charts. No, I think this is very much just about getting up to speed, but I think what I've learned is just in how different the mentality of the different teams are as it pertains to the overall setup of the car. We've seen some that have gone and expected that the overall grip is going to be ultra low, and you've had other ones that are kind of waiting for that grip to come up, for the grip to come to the car. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing this afternoon is, does the track come to some of these drivers? Elio Castroneves being one of the cases where the car just didn't look suited to the track conditions at all. And I've got to give a shout out here to my Norwegian buddy Atle Gulbrandsen, who tweeted at us here, and he's asking if IndyCar will be shown on Viasat in Norway this year. Not exactly sure. I know it'll be on Viasat Sport in Sweden. Not sure if that translates to Norway or not, but certainly hope it does, and it'd be great to have some more exposure to IndyCar in Norway, because that was really a rarity when I lived in Norway. The opportunity for me to catch IndyCar action, it was all on YouTube.
Watching Joseph Newgarden in the Hitachi-sponsored machine make his way around Circuit of the Americas. Joseph Newgarden, I think everything just it just seems to be a perfect fit with him at Team Penske.
Yeah, it 100% is, and he just had such a great opportunity to learn with Fisher Hartman Racing in the early stages, and then Ed Carpenter Racing a few years into his career, and he really, by the time he got to Team Penske, was the finished piece. He was ready for it. He showed speed in his first 3 seasons in IndyCar, but he didn't necessarily have the consistency and the ability to put together a championship run. But what he did in his first year with Team Penske was exactly what he had been working on for so long. And I think last year you obviously saw flashes of that. There were a few races where he wasn't necessarily 100% on pace, but I think this year he'll be a serious contender.
All right, tell you what, we'll finish our thoughts on Joseph Newgarden in 2019 in just a minute. First, let's go back to pit road and Jake Query.
Marcus Ericsson has had, if you want to call this a debut as a test, pretty impressive to come out there and put that machine at the top of the speed charts. Welcome to the NTT IndyCar Series.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's exciting to be here, and it was a good first morning.
How long did it take you to really get familiar once you went out with the car? Take me through the first couple of laps and just what your overall feeling in going out and turning laps is.
Yeah, I had a few days before coming here, and it's been a bit of a, have to change quite a bit how I drive. In the IndyCar, it's quite different to the Formula One I'm used to. But now, obviously, this is a track where I've been to before. But the first couple of laps, it was still a reset for me to sort of understand how this car is to be driven in the best way around here. So, but yeah, towards the end of the morning, it was starting to feel more comfortable, and it is a fun car. The car is moving around a lot, and this track is amazing to drive. So it's been fun, and I'm sure for IndyCar, it's a great place to come back and race for later in the year.
I've got a feeling we'll be hearing plenty from you over the course of the year. So say hello to the fans. Checkered Flag Falls here. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Mark, this rookie has been very, very fast. One test session here in the books at the Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, and don't forget, folks, at 3:30 Eastern, you rejoin us for session number 2. We certainly appreciate all the interaction that we've had. Guys like Ensign Ricky headed out now to clear off a half a foot of snow from their home in Wisconsin. We feel for you, brother, because it is beautiful here at Circuit of the Americas. He said he wants to get the snow shoveled so he can come back and enjoy this afternoon on IndyCar.com. Again, 3:30 Eastern. For Jake Query, Anders Crone, I'm Mark Jane. So long for now from Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas.